Hi everyone, welcome to our online event series today at ACCESS Employment. Our topic today is Steps to Successful Interviewing in Canada. My name is Rebecca Lee and I'm the coordinator for online services here at ACCESS Employment. I also have a special guest with me here today, and this is Vivian Li. She's our Senior Manager for Inclusive Recruitment at RBC Royal Bank, and she'll be facilitating with me today on this workshop today. I myself have been supporting the online services team here at ACCESS for the past year and a bit. I've been creating a lot of the virtual networking events to connect job seekers nationally around the world with reputable employers like RBC, newcomer professionals as well that have found success in Canada. Previous to that, I've also worked as a job developer for our Leadership Connections program here at ACCESS, helping 200 plus internationally trained finance and banking professionals relaunch their careers in the Greater Toronto region as well. Before that, I also worked in talent acquisition, business development, marketing for telecommunications, executive search, and also in the consulting sector as well. And in my free time, I do enjoy traveling around the world and meeting different people from different cultures and trying many different types of foods. That's a little bit about me, and that's a little picture of us, myself and an employee from RBC Royal Bank doing a virtual speed mentoring session as well. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Vivian, to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hello, everyone. My name is Vivian Li. I'm an immigrant myself. I came to Canada around 14 years ago. I'm currently leading RBC's Inclusive Recruitment team, and my team is dedicated to helping individuals from diverse communities who face employment barriers launch their career within RBC, because the diversity and inclusion is one of RBC's core values. As an immigrant myself, I deeply understand the challenges the newcomer face, such as language and cultural barriers and lack of network. I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity to work with Rebecca and share some of the insights that I have from my job. Hopefully, we will be able to provide some useful tips in your job search and help you launch your career in Canada.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vivian.
Yep.
I'm just going to talk a little bit about ACCESS Employment as well. We have been around for over 30 years, and we provided services and programs to job seekers and new Canadians. We have established relationships with over 2,000 plus employers, including RBC, across multiple sectors and industries in Canada. We also deliver a variety of sector-specific programs, communications training, and as well as mentoring programs as well to our job seekers. And more recently, we have delivered online services, such as this webinar that you're attending today, to our pre-arrival job seekers that are approved to land in Canada, as well as newcomers across Canada, and anyone else that's actually looking for a job that wants our online services as well. And Vivian, over to you for RBC.
I'll give a brief introduction about RBC, who we are. The Royal Bank of Canada's largest bank. We are also one of the largest banks in the world based on the market capitalization. We have over 80,000 full-time, part-time employees who serve more than 16 million personal business, public sector, and institutional clients through offices in Canada, US, and 36 other countries. I want to talk a little bit about RBC, how diversity and inclusion our key value and how it helps to enable RBC to bring to life our purpose of helping clients thrive and communities prosper. At RBC, we truly believe that coming together, we share our unique perspectives and we grow as an organization and as individuals. This helps us attract and retain the best talent and to better serve and meet the needs of our increasingly diverse client markets. One of our hiring principles is to hire from the community to serve the community. We help our clients in over 200 languages. Our workforce has 33% of the visible minorities, and the majority of them are either first or second generation immigrants. We leverage the diversity of our workforce as an asset that is a competitive advantage in the marketplace. We believe immigrant employees bring with them their unique cultural acumen and international experience. This allows us to not only excel in Canada, but also in the global market. With a large representation of immigrants in our workforce, we have a strategic focus in recent years in developing our immigrant employees into senior leadership roles. We have also have an employee resource group called Mosaic, that helps immigrant employees build leadership skills as well as providing network and mentoring opportunities within the organization.
Thank you, Vivian.
Yep.
So for our agenda today, we will be discussing about interview formats, the common types of interview questions faced by job seekers in Canada, also strategies for delivering a successful interview in Canada as well. Vivian is just going to be sharing first about the different types of interview formats. So Vivian, over to you for interview formats.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca. In terms of interview types and formats, I just want to briefly touch on a few points. There are two interview types. One is screening interview, the other one is selection interview. Usually the screening interview is done by a recruiter, so it's a very quick and efficient way for the recruiters to identify qualified candidates before they pass on the candidates to the hiring manager. So those kind of interviews are usually conducted over the phone. The recruiter will validate your qualifications and, for example, whether you're qualified to work in Canada and ask a few typical screening questions. Should the recruiter consider you a good candidate to be passed on to the hiring manager, you will be invited to the selection interview, which usually is conducted by the hiring manager. So that is to fully explore the qualifications of a candidate. In terms of the format of the interview, there's the one-on-one, which is the most frequently used interview. Basically, you are invited to meet with the hiring manager, and you're going to answer some questions, and the hiring manager is going to fully explore your qualifications. Another format of the interview is panel interview. Basically, you will be meeting a few decision makers for the position. They will take turns to ask you the questions. A not frequently used interview format. However, in recent years, we do sometimes purposely provide that kind of interview just to make sure that we address our unconscious bias, so that people can provide their own feedback, a different perspective on the candidate, and make sure that our selection is fair. So that's about the interview types and the format. I will pass it back to Rebecca to talk in details about some interview questions.
Thank you, Vivian. So we're now going to just cover about the different types of interview questions that you will encounter when you are in Canada. There are 4 different types of questions that you may face. So the first one would be general. The second one will be personal questions, personal attribute questions. There's also technical questions and also behavioral interview questions as well. So general questions are used to open an interview. So they allow you to share your background information, and they allow the interviewer to get a general sense of your education and work experience. Personal attribute questions allow the interviewer to explore who you are as a person. Technical questions are used to determine if you have a specific technical skill required for the position. And behavioral questions determine how you will react in a specific situation. So we're actually going to go into the different types of interviews in greater detail right now. So what are general questions? So these are questions, as I mentioned, that just serve as an introduction. So it could be, tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume. Who are you? What have you accomplished so far in your career? So these are just general questions that describe your qualifications, your career history, and a range of skills as well. So you should also emphasize steps in your career and skills that are most relevant to the job when you're answering general questions. We will look at some of these more commonly used general questions and suggest ideas on how to answer them later. The next one is personal attribute questions. So these questions are used to uncover who you are as a person. So your professional values, ethics, principles, natural strengths, weaknesses, talents, interests, passion, work style, and all of that. So the point of these questions is actually for the interviewer to determine whether or not you are a good fit for the organization. So an example of a question that they might ask you could actually be, what is one of your greatest weaknesses, right? Or what are some of your top strengths that you can bring to this position? And here's some additional examples, personal attribute questions. So like one of them could be, what's your working style like? How would you approach X? What are some key principles or values do you apply to your work? Or what are you most passionate about and why? So these questions may seem a little bit more so-called soft, but they can tell the interviewer a lot about your personality and how you would fit with the organization's culture as well. There's also a technical question aspect as well. In terms of technical questions, you want to ask about what are some computer programs that you're using? And what are some computer technology that you're using right now? What about communication software or construction equipment and tools? What are some challenges you have using this type of equipment? This one is a little bit more obvious, but the employer is trying to find out whether or not you have specific skills to do the job that they're requiring. The last one is one that we want to emphasize a little bit more time on. This one is the behavioral question. Past behavioral questions are questions that require you to share exactly what happened in specific situations in your past work experience. The assumption behind past behavioral questions is that past behavior is the best predictor for future behavior. Some examples of past behavioral questions, just from my own experience, would be describe a time where you had to take initiative on a project, or give me an example of a situation when you had a conflict with your supervisor, or tell us about a situation when you had to resolve a customer complaint. I'm also going to just get some feedback from Vivian Li as well. Vivian, do you have any common behavioral questions that perhaps you can share that RBC might ask?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, the behavior questions are based on the job requirements. For example, if the job requires you to be able to resolve conflict, there might be questions such as, tell me about a time when you disagree with a coworker and how you resolved the disagreement. There are also questions such as the job is very time sensitive and ask you to prioritize and how did you receive exceptional results. We might ask to tell us a time when collaborating with others yielded exceptional results. What role did you have and what was the result? Basically, those are some typical behavior interview questions.
Thanks, Vivian. You can also look up additional behavioral questions as well online. If you Google common behavioral questions, you can also get a list of there as well, and also on our website, which I will show you later. What's the best way to answer behavioral questions? There are many different ways of tackling this, but one of the common ways that we'll share with you is the SOAR method. That would be situation, ownership, action, and results. Let's go into that. This is an example that I can give you using the SOAR format. If the past behavioral question is, tell me a time when you had to meet a really tight deadline. Here's a sample response. The situation would be, we had to write the proposal from beginning to end overnight. I identified the strengths of the staff in my department and delegated specific responsibilities. So that's ownership. We split into small groups. I moved from group to group, keeping the teams on track and giving them breaks when necessary. That's the action. After working all night, we had the proposal in by the deadline of 8 a.m. We won the contract, and that's the result. And that's a really great format to follow when you are answering behavioral questions, and do try to keep it concise. I know that Vivian will also attest to that as well. If you're going to be going on and on for 10 minutes for one question, the interview will never end. You just want to make sure that you're answering your questions within 2 minutes and 3 minutes max, I would say. The SOAR format can also be used for other questions as well, such as situational questions. I will also show you how to apply that as well in a different question format. What's a situational question? Situational question is also a form of a behavioral question, but they're asking you to speculate or predict how you would behave in a specific situation. These questions will have the word if in them. One of an example would be, what would you do if you were up against a deadline that you couldn't meet? If you were managing an X type of project, what type of approach would you take? When you're answering hypothetical questions, this is not something that you're looking at in your past, but something that you would do in a hypothetical or future situation. Try to refer back to a real situation where you were actually in and how you would answer a hypothetical question using the first example question. If you were up against a deadline you couldn't meet, you might want to answer, if I were up against a deadline I couldn't meet, I would first make a realistic assessment of what I would have done by the deadline. I would then communicate that to my supervisor, starting with what I could have done. With the parts of the project that I couldn't complete, I would indicate when those parts realistically get completed. I did this on a recent project in which unforeseen circumstances caused delays on the last component of the project. My supervisor was really pleased with my realistic evaluation of when the deadlines could be met. You can see in this example that I would tell the employer how I would do that, but also give a really quick snip of what I did do in my past and what my result was. You can always share a little bit about what you've done in the past as well, even if it is a situational question. When you're asked what are your salary expectations, it's really important to research what the salary range is, especially in Canada. There are a number of salary guides or different people out there that can give you an idea of what your market rate is. And you should not tell somebody that I'm looking for anything, because that just shows that you are not informed of your market rate. You should also not mention that you're looking for a lower salary range because you want to get your foot in the door. That also shows that you're undervaluing your skills. And again, you don't know your market range. If you mention that you're just looking for $100,000 and not showing that you've done any research that is the range, then that may come off as, again, not knowing your market range and not being flexible. It is important to provide a range in the 10K range. You can say I'm looking for something between 40 to 50 according to my research looking at salary guides in Canada. If you're not sure about your rate, make sure you know what it is first before you go and meet an employer. Quoting a lower salary does not guarantee you that you'll actually get a better chance of getting an interview. The reason for that is because the employer may think that you're not confident with your skills as well, or they might just think that you haven't done the research. If you demonstrate flexibility and willingness to be compensated in other ways if necessary, such as vacation days, benefit packages, and all of that, it just shows that you've done sufficient research and you're someone that is also very easy to work with as well and is very flexible. I'm going to pass it over to Vivian, and she's just going to give you some strategies on conducting and preparing for a successful interview.
There are actually a lot of things that you can do to prepare for the interview, and the better you spend time preparing for the interview, the more confident you will be during the interview. In order to be successful in the interview stage in the job search process, you need to research the company. This not only helps you better, prepare your answers, but also give you an idea whether this is the company you want to work for. For example, if you want to prepare an interview for a position in RBC, maybe check our website, go to rbc.com and check out our annual report and understand a little bit more about our purpose, what companies strive for, and what's our direction moving forward. It also helps you to, if you could understand a little bit about the management style of the organization, as well as the position you are applying for. In order to do that, you can try to, now LinkedIn is a good tool for you to research, maybe ask for some information from someone who's doing a similar job, or try to make connections with the person who's doing a similar job, either within RBC or in the other organizations. Say you are applying for a financial analyst role, you can make some connections with someone who's already doing the role and ask for the job requirement and what is it to make it successful in the role. That kind of information you have collected will actually help you a lot in the interview. Another point that we have mentioned actually in the previous webinar is do some informational interview through your connections and say, I just want 30 minutes of your time. I'm interested in this role. I was wondering whether you can have a coffee chat with me. In those situations, a lot of people are willing to provide that kind of information interview to you, especially when you don't have a request to get hired. And another thing that usually is a logistic question, but it's very important, make sure you know the exact location of the interview and how to get there. Do not be shy to ask whoever scheduled interview for you. Say, can I have your contact information just in case? Because it happened, in the past a lot when you're in a rush and you're not familiar, you're in a new city and you don't know what is the right way to get there. And sometimes you might get stuck in traffic, right? You want to make sure you have the contact number to make the hiring manager or interviewer aware that you will be a few minutes late, or just get a confirmation about the location you will be in. So that's something to keep in mind. Next slide. As we discussed and Rebecca mentioned just now, there are a lot of questions actually, both situational, behavior questions that you can actually prepare before your interview, simply because all the competencies required are listed in the job mandate. For example, a lot of jobs requires teamwork, requires how you prioritize your workload, how to work with others, and how do you impact and influence others. For those type of questions, you can actually prepare the answer before the interview so that you are less stressed out and less worried when you walk into the interview. You can prepare using the SOAR format and prepare your answers ahead of time. You also would want to prepare a few questions for the interviewer, because that shows that you are actually very interested in the job and you are doing the research when it comes to the interviewer asking you questions. So what questions do you have for me? If you say, oh, I don't have any questions, that doesn't show that you have done enough homework. So that's a piece of advice I would give. And rehearse your answers. That's something that we always advise. If possible, find someone who can do a mock interview with you, because it can be either a friend, a colleague, or you can say, if you come to Canada and you join ACCESS Employment, they always provide services like that it will help you formulate your answers, and it will make you much less stressed out and nervous during the real interview. Sometimes if you don't have someone to practice with, you can always practice in front of a mirror. Then you see your facial expressions, and you can sometimes record your answers and come back to it. That also helps. Next slide. The last piece of advice, it's very important, is do not get yourself stressed out before the interview. It's very important that you prepare it emotionally and mentally, and do not over-prepare. By over-prepare means you are actually making yourself sleepless and too nervous. Eventually, it is just an interview throughout your lifelong journey. So put this into perspective. That will help you better position yourself for the interview. And also, it will help you when you answer the interview questions. Do not over-stress yourself for just an interview. Anyhow, the good night's sleep and the good breakfast is most important. There are a few things that we just want to mention. It'll be a nice to do. Get several copies of your resume. We know that in most situations when you apply for a job, you already upload your soft copy of resume in the system, and usually the hiring managers should have them ready, but just prepare a few copies just in case. So you're invited to a panel interview and the interviewer part didn't get prepared enough. Maybe they only have one copy interviews. It's good to have a few copies, and professional reference just in case they ask. It's not a must to have, but you can always have it in your portfolio folder just in case you want to provide that. The questions about the company I just mentioned, your credentials and the licenses, usually those are nice to have when the hiring manager might not request it, but just in case. Portfolio of work, depending on the position. For example, if you are a graphic designer, you might want to showcase what you have done, right? So that's a good, nice to have. Paper and pen, just in case you need to note down some questions and to keep you on track of the questions. The final touch, how to dress yourself professionally, I think it's very dress one step above what you actually wear on the job. It's always a good piece of advice. Make sure that they're clean, neat, and in good condition. Pay attention to personal hygiene. Don't wear too much makeup or jewelry. That's just to make sure that you do not distract the interviewers. Another thing that's very important, please do not use perfume and cologne. That is a Canadian workplace etiquette because some people are allergic to the perfume and the cologne, so make sure that you do not wear them to the interview. So it's a good idea to prepare what you will wear the night before the interview so that you're not scrambling to make your wardrobe decisions last minute. Next point I want to touch on is what should you do during the interview? So when you are answering questions, first I want to talk a little bit about the nonverbal communication. Interview is not only about verbal communication, but also about nonverbal communication. There are 2 points that I want to highlight. One is the eye contact. And the reason I want to mention that is based on my own personal experience and my experience working with immigrant job seekers and the newcomers is in Canada, eye contact is a sign of honesty and confidence. I know it's been an adjustment for people from some cultures, and it might take time to adjust, but try your best to maintain eye contact with the interviewer throughout the interview. If you're invited to a panel interview, make sure you have eye contact with all the panel members instead of focusing on one you are more comfortable with or the one that you think might be the key decision maker. So everyone's opinion counts in the panel interview. If you're only giving your attention to one person, it might be seen as a sign of disrespect in others, even though you might not be intentionally doing so. Another point I want to mention is listening. So instead of jumping in to present yourself and answer questions, make sure that you listen to what hiring managers are asking and make sure you understand their questions perfectly before answering them. Sometimes it is not your verbal communication skills, but you're not being able to listen that makes you fail in the interview. Next slide, please. When you are answering the questions during the interview, please keep the following in mind. Be sure that you understand the question before you answer it. Ask for clarification if you need it. And this actually is very frequent mistake when it comes to newcomers because sometimes newcomers are very shy asking the interviewers to repeat a question. Even though they might not perfectly understand the question, they're too shy to ask, and they might think that it is their language barrier that they didn't understand the question. Just want to make sure that it is perfectly okay to ask the interviewer to repeat the question. And even sometimes you might want to paraphrase the question yourself and then ask the interviewer, did I understand your question right? So that will help a lot. And also take a few seconds after hearing question to formulate your answer. You don't have to answer immediately. Think before you speak. Keep your answers brief, less than 2 minutes for each answer. That actually happens a lot when the interviewer asks you, for example, just a very simple opening question. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Sometimes the interviewee might not know when to stop. They would go on, and sometimes it takes 10 minutes for them to give a brief introduction about themselves. So practice that answer before the interview, say your elevator pitch that we have talked about. And try to summarize your key achievement and your key work history instead of going into too much detail. The other one is make sure that you don't interrupt the interviewer. You can definitely ask the interviewer to repeat a question, as I just mentioned, but just make sure that you wait for the person who asked the question to complete the sentence, and when they have a pause, it's always polite to wait, and then you ask the question. Next slide. After, basically at the end of the interview, remember to do the following to make sure that provide a list of the professional references that the interviewer can contact in order they need more information. You can offer. Sometimes the hiring manager may say, oh, we do not need at this stage, but it's always nice to offer. It's very, very important to ask for the next steps in the hiring process and time frames for this next steps. Make sure that interviewer does not need anything else from you. And also, it kind of reduce your anxiety. It's perfectly okay say, so what is the next step in your interview process? How long do you need to make a hiring decision? A lot of the situations, the hiring manager will offer to provide that situation themselves. For example, if I were to invite someone to an interview, by the end of the interview, I will let them know that we're in the process of doing a few more interviews. Most likely, we'll be able to invite you to the next round of interview, or most likely, we'll be able to make the hiring decision within the next 3 weeks, or we will keep you posted. So asking that kind of, confirmation about time frame will actually make it easier for yourself instead of you wondering after 1 week whether they have made a hiring decision. It's very important to restate your interest in the position and thank the interviewer and interviewers for their time. So I will pass it back to Rebecca to talk about what you should do after the interview.
Thank you, Vivian. So after the interview, no matter whether or not it went amazing or it was okay or it was bad, you should always send a follow-up email. So I can't emphasize that enough. I know that even myself being in recruitment in the past, and Vivian, I'm sure you can attest to that, not everyone writes an email to say thank you. And it's so important to take the time to do that. Thank the interviewer for their time, and it also shows that you're still motivated to get the position. And as Vivian mentioned, reinstating your interests and your skills for the position. It's an opportunity for you to also repeat your key message and also to offer new thoughts and ideas as well. So do keep it short, don't make it too long, but it's definitely a great idea to do a follow-up. And if you don't hear back from the email, don't take it personally. Just assume that it's been read and it's part of a procedure. And if you don't hear back generally from a position for 2 weeks, it's okay to also send an email to the point of contact at the company that you interviewed for just to follow up. So another follow-up email could be, hi, I just wanted to follow up on my status for this position that I interviewed for. That's completely okay as well to do, and it shows that you're just taking initiative and that you're still interested in the position. I also just wanted to provide some tips on staying positive and motivated during your job search as well. So a lot of you are planning on coming to Canada, or you're in Canada already and you just started looking for jobs, and that is great. But just remember that job search should not be 100% of what you're doing all day at home, because sometimes you just forget to take care of yourself, and health is also very important. It's not good when an employer sees you at an interview and looks like you've lost 30 pounds, you haven't slept in a week, and you smell like alcohol, or you've been eating a lot and you look depressed or you look sad. That doesn't look good on you, and it's very stressful for you. So you just want to make sure that you are caring for yourself, you're eating well, you're sleeping well, you're also staying active as well. Canada is a really great place to be active. We have lots of trees, lots of parks, lots of gyms. You can definitely stay active or go and meet with friends and just be with people that are positive. Don't surround yourself with people that are negative and can tell you that you can't do it, because that's just going to bring you down. If you ever get a rejection letter, don't take it personally. Sometimes it's just simply because the landscape right now is very competitive, and don't be so hard on yourself. Sometimes the reason why you didn't get the job is simply because there was someone that was a better fit. Keep trying and keep trying. And I just wanted to give advice as well. A lot of people ask me, I'm getting rejected because I don't have Canadian experience? And that's 100% no. It's not because you don't have Canadian experience. It could be because your resume was not good. It could be because you didn't answer the questions as well. Maybe you weren't prepared enough. Maybe it was your soft skills. There are so many different factors that could be because you didn't get the job. Don't just assume that it's because you didn't have Canadian experience or was one thing or another. Really look at it in the bigger picture, and then you can go from there. And if you need any advice on that, I would encourage you to, if you are in Toronto, come to ACCES Employment. You can definitely get some advice from any of our employment counselors. And just remember that it does take time to secure a great job. So do give yourself some time. It's not going to happen in an instant, but just remember that every time you are interviewing, every time you're applying for a job, you are getting one step closer to finding that job yours. So that does conclude our workshop or /webinar for today. This is our online job search center that our staff has created here at ACCES. We will be sending you the link to this website after the webinar, and you'll see here that we have a number of our past webinars, including the ones from RBC Royal Bank. We also have a number of articles, quizzes, also short videos as well, just related to job search. If you have any questions, you want to do additional research or any more activities just to help you prepare for job searching in Canada, this is your go-to place. We have an upcoming webinar with RBC on August 24th. This is a different type of webinar, and it's a financial literacy webinar. The title is Helping You Start Your Financial Life in Canada and How RBC Can Help. It's happening on August 24th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This financial webinar will cover the basics about banking in Canada and what RBC Royal Bank can offer. RBC staff will actually be discussing the following about RBC, getting settled in Canada, building a foundation, planning for your future, and talking about the RBC Welcome to Canada package. You can sign up for this event and all of our other future webinar events at accessemployment.ca/online event series. And just in terms of staying in touch, please do follow us on our Twitter, our LinkedIn, as well as our Facebook page, as we do provide a lot of updates on our upcoming events and resources as well. And Vivian, you wanted to also share a little bit more information about RBC?
Absolutely. So if you are interested in joining RBC as an employee, please do visit our job site. I believe, Rebecca, you're going to show our new job site. You can Google or type in jobs.rbc.com. So this is our fabulous new job site. We have a lot of artificial intelligence built into it. For example, if you search a certain job, we would have a lot of similar jobs recommended for you. Please do not forget to set up a job alert, in which situation if there's any new jobs that's matching your interest and experience, you will receive email job alerts. Another site I would definitely recommend you to visit is our Newcomers to Canada site. We have a lot of very good offerings to newcomers, from opening your first bank account to buying your first home. I do recommend you visit and browse through the information there.
Thank you so much, Vivian.
Yeah.
And that does conclude our webinar for today, and just thank you so much for tuning in, and we do hope that you found this useful. Thank you for your participation, and I just want to say a very special thank you to Vivian Li just for partnering with me on this webinar, and your insight has been great on this session with us.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks everyone, and all the best, and thank you so much just for subscribing to our online event series. Have a great day or evening.